"That's impossible," Dr. Jessica Martinez whispered, running the ultrasound probe over Sarah's abdomen for the fourth time. The machine wasn't malfunctioning. The mass inside Sarah was moving in ways that defied medical science. Each new scan showed something different, as if the entity within was shape-shifting, refusing to be categorized. Sarah lay on the examination table, her hospital gown damp with cold sweat. The monitoring equipment beeped steadily, recording vital signs that made no sense. Her hormone levels had skyrocketed beyond anything in the hospital's records, prompting 3 separate labs to recalibrate their equipment, believing it faulty. But each new test confirmed the impossible numbers. "Look at this," Jessica pointed to the screen, calling over Dr. Thompson, the head of obstetrics. "The density keeps changing. I've never seen anything like it." The mass appeared to have its own circulatory system, but it didn't match any normal fetal development pattern. It was as if something was growing inside Sarah that wasn't quite a baby, but wasn't quite anything else either. Sarah's case file grew thick with conflicting expert opinions. The hospital's tumor board was baffled. The reproductive specialists were stumped. 3 different specialists had proposed 4 different diagnoses, each more unlikely than the last. Some suggested rare tumors, others pointed to unprecedented developmental anomalies. One expert from Johns Hopkins even flew in specifically to examine her, only to leave more confused than when he arrived. Late one night, against medical advice, Sarah sneaked into the hospital's research library. Her doctor's badge still worked, giving her access to ancient medical journals and case studies too old to be digitized. As she pored over yellowed pages under flickering fluorescent lights, a pattern emerged. Cases from around the world, scattered across decades. Women whose pregnancies had ended in shocking discoveries. But before she could document her findings, another attack of searing pain sent her crashing to the floor, blood seeping through her scrubs. The emergency team found her unconscious among scattered papers and open books. As they rushed her to intensive care, Jessica spotted one of the papers Sarah had been reading. A case from 1963, eerily similar to Sarah's. The patient had died before doctors could determine what was growing inside her. Mark paced the hospital corridor while the medical team worked to stabilize his wife. Through the ICU window, he watched as machines beeped and doctors argued over treatment protocols. Sarah's body was changing rapidly now, her abdomen distended and discolored, her vital signs erratic. Whatever was inside her was growing faster, becoming more aggressive. "We need to do something now," Jessica announced to the assembled medical team, her voice firm despite her exhaustion. "I have an idea, but it's experimental and dangerous." She pulled up the newest scan on the monitor, revealing something that made even the veteran doctors gasp. The mass had developed features that seemed almost intelligent. The experimental MRI machine hummed ominously as Sarah lay inside, her heart racing. The massive device was the hospital's newest acquisition, featuring prototype software designed to capture biological processes in real time. Dr. Martinez and a team of specialists huddled around monitors, their faces illuminated by the screen's blue glow. This was their last chance to understand what was happening before Sarah's condition deteriorated further. Initiating contrast sequence, the technician announced. The machine's magnetic field intensified, creating images with unprecedented clarity. Sarah fought to remain still despite the waves of pain coursing through her body. Through the intercom, she could hear fragments of urgent conversation. "Look at the vascular formation. That's not possible. Call Dr. Rhodes from oncology. Now." The new imaging protocol revealed something that made even the veteran doctors step back in shock. Inside Sarah's body, they found what looked like a biological impossibility. A complex mass of tissue that appeared to be mimicking a pregnancy while developing its own independent circulatory system. But it wasn't just a tumor, and it wasn't a fetus. It was something in between. "It's a teratoma," Dr. Rhodes announced, pointing to a particular section of the scan. But unlike anything in medical literature, the rare tumor type was known for containing different types of tissue, hair, teeth, even rudimentary organs. But this one had evolved far beyond that. It had developed a primitive nervous system and was actively producing hormones that fooled Sarah's body into believing it was pregnant. The mass had created its own ecosystem within Sarah's body, tapping into her blood supply and growing more complex by the hour. Each new scan showed further development. It was as if the teratoma was trying to become something more, pushing the boundaries of what medical science thought possible. "We have less than 48 hours," Dr. Martinez declared, studying the latest blood work. "The mass is growing exponentially. If we don't act now, it could rupture, causing catastrophic internal bleeding." The team watched in real time as the thing inside Sarah pulsed and shifted, its movements becoming more defined, more purposeful. Mark stood behind the observation glass, his hand pressed against the cold surface, as if trying to reach his wife. He watched as doctors rushed in and out of the imaging room, their faces growing more concerned with each new discovery. The medical team had already called in specialists from 3 other hospitals, each one bringing expertise in different aspects of this unprecedented case. Sarah, still conscious inside the MRI machine, listened as Dr. Martinez explained their findings. Despite her medical training, or perhaps because of it, she understood the full implications. This wasn't just a medical anomaly, it was a case that would rewrite textbooks. If she survived, "Prepare the ore," Dr. Martinez ordered, her voice steady despite the urgency. "We need to remove it now. And Sarah," she added, leaning close to the intercom, "we're going to document everything. Your case could save others who might face this in the future." The clock was ticking, and somewhere in the hospital, a surgical team was already assembling for what would become one of the most extraordinary operations in medical history. The surgery lasted 11 grueling hours. Through the operating room's observation deck, Mark watched as a team of 12 specialists worked in choreographed precision. 3 times, Sarah's vitals crashed. Twice, the surgical team encountered complications they'd never seen before. Blood-soaked sponges piled up as Dr. Martinez methodically navigated through tissue that seemed to actively resist their intervention. "It's wrapped around her major blood vessels," Dr. Martinez announced, her voice tense behind her surgical mask. "It's almost as if it evolved specifically to make removal impossible." The mass had developed tendrils that insinuated themselves through Sarah's abdominal cavity, requiring painstaking separation to avoid catastrophic damage. At hour 9, they hit a critical moment. The mass had begun to deteriorate rapidly upon exposure to air, threatening to release toxins into Sarah's bloodstream. Dr. Rhodes made a split-second decision to try an experimental preservation technique, allowing them to remove the mass intact for future study. As dawn broke over Boston, Dr. Martinez emerged from the ore with tears of relief. They'd done it. The removed mass became the centerpiece of intensive study at 3 major research institutions. Under powerful microscopes, scientists discovered that the teratoma had developed unprecedented cellular structures. It had somehow created a hybrid system that mimicked pregnancy while developing its own unique biological features. The case was featured in every major medical journal, drawing attention from researchers worldwide. Sarah's recovery was far from easy. The surgery had taken its toll, requiring months of physical therapy. But as she healed, she found a new purpose. Working from her hospital bed, she began documenting everything, collaborating with Dr. Martinez to develop new diagnostic protocols for detecting similar cases early. Their work would go on to save dozens of women from experiencing the same terrifying uncertainty. 6 months after the surgery, Sarah started a support group for women with rare medical conditions. The monthly meetings, held in the hospital's conference room, quickly grew from 5 participants to 50. Her medical knowledge, combined with her personal experience, made her uniquely qualified to bridge the gap between doctors and patients facing unusual diagnoses. 1 year to the day after her surgery, Sarah stood at the podium of an international medical conference in Geneva. Her healthy infant daughter, conceived naturally 4 months after her recovery, slept peacefully in Mark's arms in the front row. The audience of reproductive specialists sat in rapt attention as she presented her case, now known in medical circles as the Chen phenomenon. Sometimes the body can tell lies so convincing, only the truth of science can unravel them, she concluded, her voice strong and clear. But more importantly, we must never stop questioning, never stop searching for answers, even when those answers seem impossible. Her case revolutionized the understanding of reproductive system anomalies and led to the establishment of a new protocol for investigating unusual pregnancies. The imaging techniques developed during her treatment became standard practice in hospitals worldwide. But perhaps most meaningful to Sarah was the wall of her home office, where she hung photos of the women whose lives were saved, because her case taught doctors what to look for. Sarah Chen stood frozen in the hospital's dimly lit radiology room, staring at her own ultrasound image with trembling hands. As a radiologist who had analyzed thousands of scans, she knew this wasn't normal. The shadows on the screen seemed to shift and morph in ways she'd never seen in a standard pregnancy. Her hand instinctively moved to her rapidly swelling abdomen, 5 months along, but looking closer to 8. The pain returned, sharp and twisting, forcing her to grip the edge of the examination table. Dr. Wilson, her OB/GYN, had dismissed her concerns just yesterday, attributing everything to first-time mother anxiety. But Sarah knew better. She'd spent the last decade studying medical imaging. She could read ultrasounds in her sleep. This was